I used to struggle to get on a bus. Now I don't even think about that, right? I used to struggle talking in front of groups. Now I teach classes sometimes that have 40 people plus in them. When I started working with you was the summer. By the following May, so not even a year, I started teaching classes. So the progress I made was super quick.
Okay, hi guys. Welcome to this series of client testimonials. I'm really happy because today I've got my former client and good friend Adam Hanim on the call today. So Adam and I did some work together a little while ago, and he's had a really impressive personal transformation arc, and I would love for Adam to tell you guys about that today. So Adam, could you just tell people a little bit about yourself, like who you are and what your story is, and just take it away?
Yeah, so my name is Adam. I'm 38 years old. I live in London. I always have been fine making friends and things like that, but I remember when I first went to university when I was 18 and I had to step outside of my known friendship group. I found that really, really scary and really challenging. But I got through it. I made friends. I kind of settled into being at university. And when I came out of university and I got my first job, I I remember turning up at my first job and just being terrified. Just my hands were just really sweaty, and I really struggled to make eye contact with people and look at people. And I thought at the time, I didn't know what social anxiety was. I thought at the time it was my age and that maybe I was just young and a bit shy. And I thought as I get older, I would naturally grow more comfortable in my own skin. That's what I assumed would happen. And that's not what happened. I got more nervous and more socially anxious as I progressed through my career. Around 25, I changed careers slightly and started working in a more corporate environment. And I found that really, really intense. And I really struggled to speak in meetings, to talk to people, to do anything, that required me to be the center of attention and required me to talk or required people to look at me or whatever. And yeah, I just experienced really bad social anxiety, and I had so many experiences of just freezing during presentations, of me running out of meetings because just felt too shy and too anxious to talk to people. And I even remember struggling getting on the bus. I live in London, and when you get on the bus, you tap your card on the machine at the front, and then you turn. And when you turn, you've got a whole bus full of people that are looking your way. And if you have social anxiety disorder, if you don't have social anxiety disorder, that seems very, um, like a not a big deal, right? If you do have anxiety disorder, just turning and being in front of a group can be super triggering. And um, I used to struggle with that a lot, and I remember just really quickly going up to the top of the bus to kind of get out of that viewpoint. And today, thankfully, getting on the bus is not an issue for me, which is helpful because I get the bus every day. But yeah, so I would struggle with that. I would struggle, in social situations if I don't know people, I would struggle with that. Um, but work was the place where I struggled with it the most. And meetings, presentations, phone calls, anything where you feel like you're the center of attention or the spotlight is on you, and there is where you feel like there's a pressure for you to, you know, do something.
And how were you dealing with it? Like, what were your coping mechanisms, or like what were you using to deal with it before we got in touch?
The honest answer is Valium.
Mm,
I used to say Valium, which I didn't even get prescribed by. And again, I'm not advising this to anyone that might watch this or whatever. But I used to take Valium to stop panic attacks. And it's a short term effective thing, but the danger of relying on that is you can psychologically become dependent, but you can also physically become dependent if you're not careful. So yeah, I would use Valium, and I tried, as I mentioned before, I tried CBT a couple of times. I didn't really find that CBT personally resonate with me. Do, where you have to be very logical and analyze your thoughts and everything like that. I found that to be a bit of a struggle. So yeah, those are my coping mechanisms. I would say my other coping mechanisms also avoidance, trying to avoid any situation where I would be triggered. And I would also, alcohol is also another good coping mechanism. Again, not one I'm advising, but yeah, I would do things like that.
And that's very common, isn't it? Either one or all of those things, really. Usually avoidance, but also then a mix of like propanolol or Valium or some kind of medication that you can get either legally or illegally, and just doing your best to kind of cobble your own coping strategy.
Yeah, yeah. And it's tough, just one thing that just made me think of is people that struggle with social anxiety disorder, it's a mental health issue. It's in my opinion quite a serious mental health issue. And the problem with it in the workplace is that it's just viewed as you not being confident, you know. Uh, so the advice that you get typically in most working environments is you need to learn to be more confident. Not you need to deal with a mental health issue. You need to learn to be more confident. And that's something that people used to say to me as well. When you work in corporate environments and you get yearly reviews, my feedback would always be you need to be more confident. And I always struggle with that because it's not something that I'm choosing to experience. Right? It's not a matter of laziness or anything like that. It's a mental health thing. And after loads of kind of negative experiences, I started working on it. I started looking at it. I didn't know what social anxiety was. I remember going to the doctor and the doctor describing to the doctor what I was experiencing. And he said, "You have social anxiety disorder," which I'd never heard of. And so when I got home, I looked it up. And I remember being quite shocked that this was a thing. And this was a long time ago, by the way, just to give you some context. This is probably um, 2010, 2011, something like this. And yeah, I remember reading the description of social anxiety disorder, and that really just resonated with me. Like, okay, this is exactly what I have. And so I started working on it. I did a little bit of CBT on the NHS, which didn't really give me any relief at all, to be honest with you. I then started reading books. I started getting into meditation and mindfulness and trying to do what I could to work on it. And then I remember finding a video of yours on YouTube. I can't remember which one. So yeah, and then I started working with you, and we did, I don't know how many sessions together. We did a bunch of sessions, and that kind of was the beginning and the start of my my journey. I remember when I first started working with you. I don't know if you remember the specifics as well as I do, but we started working together. We started off, one of the things that you recommended that I do was social freedom exercises. And, and the first one that you recommended that I do was to go into a coffee shop and ask for a coffee, let the person make the coffee, and then tell them I'd changed my mind on my order. So to the point being to try and challenge the fear of rejection or the fear of confrontation or any of the things that people with social anxiety suffer with. And you gave me a week to do it. It was between now and the following week. You said, all I want you to do is that one challenge. And that day, I remember thinking to myself, I could either wait all week and think about it, or I could just go and do it. And I went and did it. And I remember just being super nervous beforehand, walking into this coffee shop, ordering this coffee, watching the guy make it, and then bring me the coffee over and tell him I changed my mind and that I wanted a different milk with the coffee. And he just looked at me and went, "Okay, no problem." And he went and swapped it for me. I remember walking out of the coffee shop with this massive high, this huge, just, I don't know, adrenaline, whatever brain chemistry was happening. And I remember, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was so happy that day. And that night, I couldn't sleep. And I couldn't sleep because I remember thinking to myself, if this is what it feels like to go on the other side of your fear with social anxiety, and it feels this good, all I have to do is keep going. And, I just remember just feeling very, just so optimistic about what was possible and my future. And that was probably the first time I ever felt like that. And I always remember that because I couldn't sleep that night because I was so excited and happy. And yeah, that was the first thing that we did together.
You've taken it very far since then, right? And now you're actually helping others like with their expression and social expression and public speaking and stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so as it stands, I'm technically a public speaking coach, which is a label that that doesn't resonate with me that much because I don't really care for the public speaking side in a way. The company that I work for and the work that we do, we specifically, well, I wouldn't say specifically, we more or less help people who really struggle with nervousness, with confidence, people who essentially struggle with the same things that I did. And yeah, so we work with people like that, and that's something I've been doing now for 6 years. And yeah, it was kind of a crazy process getting to that point because if you remember how what I was experiencing when we first started working together, it's been a kind of massive leap. And yeah, sometimes now I still even kind of do a double take on, okay, I'm teaching this class of however many people.
That's amazing, man. So you're more really like a social anxiety coach in a way of helping people with the performance aspect of social anxiety, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's incredible, man. Yeah, I can see why you don't really like the term public speaking coach because that doesn't go far enough at all to encapsulate what you do.
Yeah, and I think for me, public speaking is um public speaking is a really great vehicle for working on your social anxiety and for working on your confidence, because when you step up in front of a group of people, all of the things that trigger you are right there. And so even though it's super challenging and is confronting, it's actually this amazing opportunity to work on the thing to work on the thing that bothers you the most.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously, right? It's a very strong dose of that medicine, intense but powerful.
Yeah.
How would you characterize the sort of difference in the person that you are now compared to how you were when when we first started working together?
I would like to say maybe more self-accepting and more self-compassionate, which I think is a really, really fundamental aspect of working on social anxiety disorder and any mental health issue, I guess, as well. But yeah, more self-accepting and more self-compassionate. And what I mean by that is, sometimes I still do get triggered, and some things I do find scary and overwhelming. But I like to think that I am more able, I have more tools to deal with those things when they come up. And definitely in certain areas of my life, I would say I'm just more confident. I'm more confident. Sometimes when I teach classes and workshops, I tell the students my story at the beginning, and I do that because it also helps the people who are there understand. I can resonate with those experiences, and sometimes at the end of the classes, a student will say to me, "I can't believe you ever had social anxiety. You seem so confident," and that is probably the highest compliment you could pay me, coming from background of struggling with this stuff.
That is really beautiful, man. And I think also, I think it kind of speaks to that idea, which I always felt strongly was that this doesn't need to be a stigma or a burden. It can, in a strange way, be a real gift that you can actually turn into. I don't want to say superpower because that sounds really cliche, but you can turn it into something positive in your life and just be authentic and honest about your story. Say, I have suffered, I have struggled. I'm now not suffering in the way that you are, but I can help you and you can get to a much, much better place.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah.
And actually, would you mind? I think the best way to close out, if you wouldn't mind, would be what would you say to somebody watching this who has struggled for a long time, as people often do with social anxiety, often until their early 30s or around that time? What would you say to someone who has been struggling for a long time, has maybe just accepted it as a part of who they are, and have resigned themselves to the idea that they cannot change and can't improve. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's important to understand that when you're working on social anxiety disorder and trying to, get better, that it's not always a linear path, right? I think I've always expected, okay, well, I'm here now. I'll never be back here. I'll never experience that again. I think it's more helpful to know that it's a path that just has ups and downs, but as you're making progress, that's okay. And I think that even myself, I often take for granted, if I told you earlier, I used to struggle to get on a bus. Now I don't even think about that, right? I used to struggle talking in front of groups. Now I teach classes sometimes that have 40 people plus in them, for example, and I almost sort of forget where where I started. And yeah, I would say that progress is 100% possible. It's 100% possible. You just have to understand that it's not always linear, right? It's not always a straight line, and you have to be patient. And also that one of the most important things that helps is to learn to be self-accepting when you have those dips in your progress. But progress is 100% possible. And when I first started working with you, I had the same mindset. I was kind of very what's the word? I'm very, I don't know, fed up and frustrated with where I was at. And I think I can't remember how long ago I was working with you, but in a matter of uh a year. In fact, I didn't say this earlier. I think I when I started working with you was the summer. And by the following May, so not even a year, I started teaching classes.
Wow.
So the progress I made in that time was I started teaching my own classes. So that was the progress I made was super quick. The progress I made was massive.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you sharing that, and I really appreciate your time today. So, um, I want to respect your time, but is there anything you want to say before we wrap things up?
No, just just a thank you to you, because when I started working with you, it was really the beginning. It was one of the first things that I actively started doing to try and work on my social anxiety, and I really, genuinely feel like you were a catalyst for everything that I've experienced since. That you gave me just what I needed. So yeah, thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, man. And yeah, it's really impressive what you've done, and just like it's a testament to the efforts that you've put in as well. And I think it's brilliant that you're in a position now where you can help other people coming up the mountain that we've scaled ourselves. So, thanks for your time today. Thanks for those words, and I really appreciate you being on here, man.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.